Hello from Brussels and welcome to the latest Marks Week, a week of drama in Brussels as the EU finally regained momentum. And it started off early in the week when Vice President Frans Timmermans had his John Wayne moment.
For everyone who's now active in the public arena, this will be a defining moment. We will be tested and we will have to show whether we have true grit, whether we have the grit to face this challenge in a way that does not that appeals to our fight impulse and not to our flight impulse. And it remains to be seen whether we as Europeans are able to understand that we will only get through this in a way that is acceptable on the basis of our values if we stick together, if we create pan-European answers to a global problem.
Well, real fighting talk there from Frans Timmermans, who's throwing down the gauntlet to the rest of the EU to take on the COVID-19 crisis. And in fact, yesterday the European Council showed true grit by agreeing a recovery plan, a multi-trillion recovery plan. The details still have to be fleshed out, but the real thing that forced the EU leaders to agree was the forecast from the European Central Bank that the economic downturn is forecast to be 3 times greater than the last economic crisis. Hence the focus yesterday on agreeing a deal that would ensure the multi-annual financial framework would be the key instrument. And in many ways, that's better than Corona bonds because it's using the community method to fund the recovery. In terms of building momentum, there were a number of other significant developments this week, both within the European Union institutions, but also here in the city of Brussels too. And a key theme is that the recovery plan from COVID-19 has to put the environment centre stage. And indeed, there's an Ipsos Mori poll out that says that support for a green economic recovery from COVID-19 is supported by more than half the population of many member states of the European Union, including those hardest hit like Italy and Spain. And that was a key theme of the intervention this week by Commissioner Breton, the Internal Market Commissioner, understanding that tourism has been one of the hardest hit sectors. But he said that the recovery means that the industry that comes out of the crisis will not be the same as the one that goes in. He says it's got to be resilient, it's got to be digital, but above all, it's got to be environmentally sustainable. He's working on a recovery plan for the sector for the autumn. He wants to work with stakeholders, and he's made it very clear he wants to try and protect Europe's tourism jewels. Another major intervention was again by Frans Timmermans speaking to the Environment Committee of the European Parliament. Let's listen to what he had to say.
We have a strong duty to convince all our constituents that the Green Deal is not a luxury we don't need now that we're in a crisis.
So a clear message there from Frans Timmermans that you don't abandon the Green Deal in the face of the COVID-19 crisis. And that message was continued with the intervention by the Transport Commissioner, Commissioner Valland, who, speaking online, made it very clear that getting transport back was a priority for hers, but she also said she's working now on guidelines for the restarting of transport and tourism as early as the summer. Let's listen to what she said.
To provide some guidelines for restarting the travel and tourism for this season, because again we need to take into consideration the health criteria first and foremost, and safety criteria. And then again, for an internal market, it's better to have harmonized approach than see each one taking its own measures. So then for a traveler or for a citizen will be difficult to understand what measures are applying exactly where.
Transport Commissioner Valland there talking online earlier in the week. There have been some developments here in the city of Brussels too that I think are very significant. Firstly, and we heard earlier from Commissioner Breton warning us that because of COVID-19 we risk losing some of Europe's tourism jewels. Well, it looks like we'll be losing one here in Brussels with the announcement by the Metropole Hotel that's been trading for 125 years and has survived 2 world wars that they fear they will have to close. They're going to have to stop everything permanently, with the risk of the loss of also of 129 jobs. In better news is the announcement that the improved traffic conditions in the city within the inner ring road, within the so-called Pentagon, they will be made semi-permanent, with from the 1st of May priority being given to pedestrians and cyclists over motor vehicles, and the speed limit slashed to just 20 kilometers an hour. I'm sure many of us will welcome that, and indeed I think most of us would argue that should become a permanent feature of life in Brussels. Thanks for watching. Check out News and Views next week, when we'll have a full report on those Brexit negotiations that were taking place this week, also touching of course on the latest COVID-19 developments and that all important song of the week. Make sure you like, you comment, you share, but above all, stay safe.